The void stretched endlessly, an infinite expanse of nothingness. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the concept of day and night was meaningless. The cold was not just physical, it seeped into the soul, a chilling reminder of the isolation that enveloped them. The prison ship, a steel coffin hurtling through the void, became their tomb. Once a vessel of containment, it now drifted aimlessly, a ghost ship in the vast sea of stars. The metal walls, once a barrier to freedom, now served as a reminder of their impending doom. No bars, no guards. The corridors, once filled with the sounds of life, were now silent. The cells, once teeming with the energy of the incarcerated, stood empty. The absence of life was palpable, a haunting echo of what once was, just the echoing emptiness of a forgotten corner of space. The stars, distant and indifferent, offered no solace. They were mere pinpricks of light in an otherwise impenetrable darkness, a stark contrast to the desolation that surrounded the ship. They were left to die. Abandoned by those who deemed them unworthy of rescue, they faced the harsh reality of their fate. The isolation was suffocating, a constant reminder of their abandonment. Each passing moment was a struggle, a fight against the inevitable. The prisoners, once hardened criminals, now trembled in the face of oblivion. Food dwindled. Hope withered. The strong facade they once wore began to crumble, revealing the vulnerability beneath. They huddled together for warmth, for comfort, for a semblance of humanity in an inhumane situation. The vastness of space pressed down, suffocating, a constant reminder of their isolation. The endless void was both a physical and psychological barrier, an oppressive force that weighed heavily on their minds. It was a prison without walls, a sentence without end. Survival became a distant dream. The will to live, once strong and unyielding, began to fade. Despair took root, growing like a dark shadow over their hearts. The hope of rescue, of salvation, seemed like a cruel joke, a distant memory of a time long past. But even in the depths of despair, the will to live flickers like a stubborn ember. It was a small, fragile thing, but it was there. A glimmer of hope in the darkness, a reminder that even in the bleakest of circumstances the human spirit can endure. They clung to life, a brotherhood forged in the crucible of abandonment. In their shared suffering they found strength. In their unity they found a reason to keep going. They were more than just prisoners, they were survivors, bound together by their will to live. The ship groaned under the weight of their desperation. The once pristine corridors now echoed with the sounds of metal straining, a constant reminder of their dire situation. The walls, once smooth and gleaming, were now marred with scratches and dents, each telling a story of struggle and survival. They scavenged, picking clean the carcass of their former prison. Every corner of the ship was explored, every hidden compartment opened in search of anything that could be of use. The scavengers moved with a mix of desperation and determination, their eyes scanning for any glimmer of hope amidst the wreckage. Every scrap of metal, every wire, every drop of recycled water became precious. They meticulously collected and sorted their finds, knowing that each piece could mean the difference between life and death. The air was thick with tension, but also with a sense of purpose. They were no longer just prisoners, they were survivors. They fought, they bickered, they despaired, but slowly something shifted. The initial chaos gave way to a fragile order. Arguments over resources became discussions, and despair turned into a grim determination. They began to see each other not as competitors, but as allies in a shared struggle. The instinct to survive, buried under years of confinement, resurfaced. Faces that had once been blank with hopelessness now showed signs of resolve. They remembered skills long forgotten and learned new ones out of necessity. The ship, which had once been a symbol of their captivity, now became a canvas for their ingenuity. They learned, they adapted, they shared knowledge and resources, forming a community bound by their shared plight. The ship's harsh environment became a training ground, teaching them resilience and resourcefulness. They were no longer just surviving, they were beginning to thrive. The ship, once their prison, became their reluctant savior. They repurposed its systems, transforming it from a place of confinement to a place of refuge. The walls that had once closed them in now protected them from the void outside. They found ways to make the ship work for them, turning it into a home. They coaxed life from its dying systems. Nurturing hydroponics bays and jury-rigging power sources, they survived. But more than that, they began to build a future. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. They were no longer just clawing for survival. They were forging a new existence, one scrap at a time. Years drifted by like cosmic dust, each one a testament to their resilience. Generations were born within the decaying hull of the ship. They knew nothing but this harsh existence. The weak perished, the strong endured. Over time, they were no longer merely surviving, they were thriving. Their bodies adapted to the low gravity, becoming lean and agile, their senses sharpened, honed by the constant struggle against the unforgiving void. They became one with the ship, their destinies intertwined. Legends were passed down, whispered tales of a world bathed in sunlight, a world they had never known. Stories of their ancestors, the criminals banished to the stars. These stories, once a source of bitterness, became a source of pride. They were the descendants of survivors hardened in the fires of hardship. They were no longer prisoners. They were something different, something new, something born from the darkness and silence of their exile. They were the children of the void. Section 5. The Return. A flicker on the long, dormant sensors, an echo of an unfamiliar signal. The whispers turned into a roar. A ship was approaching. After decades of silence, the outside world had found them. Curiosity warred with apprehension. Were they rescuers or reclaimers? The answer was irrelevant. They were no longer the meek and broken souls abandoned to the void. They were ready. This time they would not be forgotten. This time they would be heard. The airlock hissed, a gateway between two worlds. The sound echoed through the metallic corridors, a stark reminder of the isolation and the unknown that lay ahead. As the door slowly slid open, a sense of anticipation filled the air, mingling with the sterile scent of the spaceship's recycled atmosphere. The rescue team, clad in sterile white uniforms, stepped cautiously into the dimly lit corridors of the prison ship. Their footsteps echoed softly, a rhythmic reminder of their mission. Each member of the team was acutely aware of the gravity of their task, their senses heightened by the dim lighting and the eerie silence that enveloped them. Their eyes widened in disbelief. The sight before them was nothing like what they had been briefed on. They had expected to find a group of broken, emaciated prisoners barely clinging to life. Instead, they were met with something entirely different. Gone were the emaciated prisoners they expected. The cells, once filled with the desperate and the downtrodden, now stood empty. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, a palpable sense of change that had swept through the ship in their absence. In their place stood a community, hardened and wary, their eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity. These were not the same people who had been imprisoned here. They had transformed, adapted to their harsh environment, and forged a new identity in the void of space. Words were exchanged, greetings laced with suspicion. The air crackled with the tension of first contact, each side wary of the other's intentions. The rescuers, with their promises of a better life, were met with skepticism and guarded responses. The rescuers spoke of rehabilitation, of returning to a world that had moved on. They painted pictures of a society that had evolved, offering hope and a chance to start anew. But their words seemed to fall flat, unable to bridge the chasm that had grown between the two groups. But the words rang hollow. The promises of a new beginning seemed distant and unattainable to those who had endured so much. The rescuers' faces reflected their growing realization that this mission was far more complex than they had anticipated. They belonged to this ship, this life, this strange and terrible freedom they had carved from the void. The community had found a way to survive, to thrive even in the harshest of conditions. This ship was their home now, and the void of space, their new frontier. The rescuers, initially sympathetic, recoiled from the truth. The prisoners had not merely survived, they had transformed. Their humanity had been tempered by hardship, their morality blurred by the struggle for existence. They had become predators. Their methods of survival, honed over generations, were brutal, efficient, and utterly alien to the sensibilities of the rescuers. The line between right and wrong, once clear, had become as nebulous as the stardust swirling outside. Fear replaced pity. The rescuers, once saviors, became prey. The prison ship, once a place of confinement, became a hunting ground. The descendants of the Forgotten waged a silent war against their would-be rescuers. They fought with the cunning of animals backed into a corner, their knowledge of every creak and groan of the ship their greatest weapon. They were defending their home, their way of life, their very existence. The rescue ship limped away, a battered testament to the ferocity of the encounter. It carried with it a handful of survivors, their minds shattered by the ordeal, forever haunted by the chilling truth. The Forgotten were forgotten no more. But the galaxy now knew them not for their crimes, but for their terrifying resilience, their chilling transformation. They were a stark warning echoing through the void. Some things are best left undisturbed.